The first thing Nora Bennett did wrong that Friday night was kiss a man she had never met. The second thing was mean it, just for a second, just long enough to forget why she'd done it. But the reason was already crossing the rooftop toward her in a linen blazer the color of oat milk, a glass of something pale in his hand, and that old practiced smile on his face. And there was no time to think of a better plan than the stranger nearest the railing. So she turned, put her palm flat against a chest she'd never touched, and kissed him. He tasted like tonic and lime and surprise. Somewhere below them, the city hummed with the particular warmth of a July evening, car horns softened by distance, a saxophone leaking out of a bar 2 streets over, the fizz of string lights strung between potted olive trees. Her heart slammed. The stranger went very still under her hand, the way a person goes still when a bird lands on them, and then, because he was either kind or quick or both, he lifted his free hand and rested it lightly at the small of her back, playing along. She pulled away first. She had to. Her own pulse was embarrassing her. Sorry, she breathed against his jaw, too low for anyone else. Sorry, I know that was insane. There's a man behind me, and if he sees my face, he'll talk for 40 minutes, and I would rather walk off this roof. Don't do that, the stranger murmured. It's a lovely roof. She almost laughed. She didn't dare. Over his shoulder, she could see the oat milk blazer stall, could see the smile falter and reset, could see Trevor Landry decide, as Trevor always decided, that whatever he was looking at simply could not be about him. He redirected toward the bar with the smoothness of a man who had spent years never being told no in a way he had to hear. Nora exhaled. The night smelled of warm stone and someone's gardenia perfume and the green, bruised scent of basil from the little catering table beside them. He's gone, she said. The stranger hadn't moved his hand yet. He did now, unhurried, and stepped back to a respectful distance that somehow felt more intimate than the kiss had. He was tall in a way that didn't announce itself. Dark hair pushed back off his forehead. A faint sunburn across the bridge of his nose, as if he'd spent the afternoon somewhere without an umbrella. His eyes were doing something careful and amused at once. For the record, I've been to a great many parties, and that is the most efficient introduction I've ever received. I'm not usually, she stopped. Pressed her lips together, tasting lime. I don't do that. I believe you. A pause, gentle. Are you all right? The question landed somewhere under her ribs, in a place she kept locked. She wasn't used to it, not from Trevor, who had spent 2 years asking, are you sure you want to wear that, and never once, are you all right? She smoothed the hem of her sleeve, a small tug, twice, the way she always did when a feeling got too close. I'm fine, she said. Thank you, for not shouting, or filing a report. The night's young. He tilted his head. You could still give me a reason to. That surprised the laugh out of her. One quick, bright note that she caught in her hand too late. Down the roof, a woman in emerald called out a name that wasn't hers. The saxophone found the top of a phrase and held it, and Nora, who had come to this summer mixer strictly to hand her business card to 3 useful people and leave, felt the ground tilt half a degree under her borrowed courage. I have to go, she said, because it was true, and because true things were the only weapons she trusted. Before he circles back. The stranger nodded slowly, like a man agreeing to terms. Then go. And then, as she turned, you didn't tell me your name. No, she agreed. I didn't. She walked to the elevator with her chin level and her hands steady and her whole face burning, and she did not look back, which was the third thing she did wrong. Because if she had looked back, she'd have seen him watching her go with an expression that was no longer amused at all. An expression like a man who has just found something he wasn't looking for and now has to decide what to do about it. The elevator doors closed on the smell of gardenias. Nora leaned her head against the cool brush steel and shut her eyes and thought, with the flat certainty of a woman who has organized her entire life around not being surprised, well, at least I'll never see him again. She was so rarely wrong. It felt almost novel. The morning after, her apartment was full of the particular gold light that only happened in summer, when the sun came up over the fire escape and lay itself across the floorboards like something spilled. Nora sat on the counter in an old t-shirt with a mug going cold in her hands and told the story to the only person she trusted with it. You kissed a stranger, Priya said on speaker, chewing something. On the mouth. A whole entire stranger. On the actual mouth. To escape Trevor. I heard the words. I'm just holding them up to the light. A crunch. Nora Bennett. 2 years of me begging you to do one reckless thing. One, and I miss it because I'm at my cousin's thing, eating room temperature shrimp. This is the great tragedy of my life. It wasn't reckless. It was tactical. It was cinematic, is what it was. Priya's grin was audible. Was he at least handsome, this human shield? Nora looked into her cold coffee. The gold light moved. Somewhere below the window, a delivery truck reversed with its patient electronic beep, and a neighbor's radio drifted up. A summer song, all hand claps and horns. He was fine, she said. Oh my God. He was extremely handsome. You only say fine about men who could ruin your life. He was a stranger, Pry. That's the entire point of him. He was a wall I hid behind for 11 seconds, and now he's gone forever, and that is the best possible outcome. She slid off the counter, bare feet on warm wood, which is more than I can say for Trevor, who apparently now attends design mixers, because his new girlfriend is in the industry, and who spent the walk-in telling everyone we're still close, which we are not. We are exactly as close as a person and the door they left through. You should have told him that. I don't talk to Trevor anymore. I kiss random men and take the stairs. She said it lightly. It didn't come out light. There was a splinter under it, the memory of being the kind of woman who once did talk, who explained and re-explained herself to a man who nodded and understood and then did precisely what he'd already planned to do. She had been so reasonable for so long. Reasonable had gotten her a beautifully organized apartment and a name nobody remembered in meetings. Anyway, she said, brisker, none of it matters. I have the Halvorsen pitch Monday. If I land it, I make senior, and if I make senior, I get to sit at the table instead of against the wall, and then I never have to be the person who kisses strangers at parties, because I'll be too important to attend parties. That's the dream, Priya said dryly. Isolation, but with a better title. Don't. I'm just holding it up to the light. Nora smiled despite herself and crossed to the window, phone warm against her ear, and pushed the sash higher to let the morning in. The street below was already alive, a flower seller unrolling her awning, a man walking a dog the size of a loaf of bread, the whole block simmering toward another bright, endless day. She breathed the city in, exhaust and cut stems and hot pavement, and let herself believe, for one clean minute, that everything ahead of her was under her control. Go get your table, Nora, Priya said, gentler now. You've been standing against that wall long enough. The Halvorsen pitch was the reason Nora Bennett hadn't slept properly in 9 days. She'd built the whole thing herself. The identity system, the color story, the way the logo folded down to a single mark that would read at thumbnail size and read again on the side of a building. She had done it at her kitchen table at 2 a.m, while the summer thunderstorms rolled the sky around like furniture. Because at the firm, she was not, technically, the lead. She was support. She had been support for 3 years, at Marlowe and Finch, a mid-sized branding studio with good coffee and better clients, where the partners liked her work and forgot her name in the same breath. She got in early Monday. She always got in early. The office was best before the others came, all that pale wood and glass going amber in the low sun, the plants she watered because nobody else remembered, the smell of yesterday's coffee and this morning's floor cleaner, and the ghost of somebody's citrus perfume. She set her mock-ups along the credenza in the big glass conference room where anyone walking past would see them. She lined up the boards. She squared their corners with the flat of her hand, twice, the way she did. You slept here, said Priya, arriving with 2 iced coffees and the moral authority of a person who slept 8 hours. Don't lie to me. There's a pillow crease on your soul. I slept at home, briefly, adjacent to my bed. Nora took the cold cup gratefully. It sweated instantly in the warm room, a ring of damp on the credenza she wiped with her sleeve. Is the room booked? 10 o'clock. I confirmed it 3 times. You confirmed it 4 times. I was CCE'd on the 4th one. Priya set her bag down. Relax, you've got this. It's genuinely the best thing anyone's put in front of Halvorsen, and everyone knows it, including the people who'll pretend they thought of half of it. Let them think of half of it. I only need the half with my name on it. There's my monster. Priya sipped. Oh, before I forget. There's a whole thing this morning. Big meeting, 9 sharp, all hands, very hush-hush. Marlowe's been walking around like a man who lost a bet. Nora went still. What kind of thing? The kind nobody tells the support staff until it's decided. Priya's tone stayed light, but her eyes weren't. Word is Finch finally sold his half. So we've got new money in the building. New money usually means new somebody sitting in a new office, with new opinions about how we've all been doing everything wrong. Something cold moved through Nora's chest, out of season with the warm, bright morning. New somebody, before my pitch. After your pitch, hopefully, nobody reshuffles a firm at 9 and expects a client ready room at 10. Priya squeezed her arm. Go over your notes, I'll fend off the vultures. The all hands filled the big room at 9 on the dot. Nora stood near the back. Near the wall, of course, always the wall, with her iced coffee going watery in her hand and her mind already 3 floors ahead in the pitch. Around her the office murmured, 40-odd people in linen and lightweight summer suits, the air conditioning fighting a losing battle against the glass and the sun. Everybody's collar just slightly damp. Marlowe came in looking like a man delivering weather. He cleared his throat. He talked about legacies and next chapters, and exciting new leadership, and a name Nora didn't catch because a phone buzzed near her, and then he said, so please join me in welcoming him, and gestured to the door. And the stranger from the rooftop walked in. For a moment, Nora's brain simply refused the information, the way a hand refuses a stove. It offered alternatives. A cousin. A double. A trick of the light off the glass. But the July sun came flat across the room and lit the faint sunburn still fading on the bridge of his nose, and lit the careful, amused set of a mouth she had, 60 hours ago, put her own mouth against. And there was no alternative left. He wore a proper suit now, charcoal, no tie, the collar open. He looked exactly like a man who owned half of something. He scanned the room the way new bosses scan rooms, measuring, cataloging, filing faces, and his gaze moved across the crowd with easy authority, over the vultures and the linen and the damp collars, and then it reached the back wall. And it reached her, and it stopped. She watched him recognize her. It happened in stages, like the sun coming up. First the flicker, a man seeing a face he half knows. Then the widening, the still, silent O. And then, worst of all, the corner of that mouth lifting, just barely, just for her, an expression that said well and said this is going to be interesting, and said 100 other things she absolutely could not afford in a room where she was trying to become someone who sat at the table. This is Cole Rhodes, Marlowe was saying, from very far away. He's bought into the partnership, and he'll be taking a direct hand in our accounts, starting today. Cole, would you like to say a few words? I would, said Cole Rhodes, and his voice was the same low, unhurried voice that had told her the roof was lovely. He didn't look away from her. Thank you all. I'll keep this short. I'm a great believer in first impressions. The faintest pause. I find you learn everything you need to know about a person in the first 11 seconds. Somebody near the front chuckled politely. Nora felt the number land in her sternum like a dropped glass. 11 seconds. She had said it herself, hadn't she? 11 seconds. No, she hadn't. She'd said it to Priya, on the phone, in her own kitchen. She was assembling a conspiracy out of a coincidence. He couldn't possibly. It was a number, people said. But he was still looking at her when he said it, and the small burning began at the base of her throat and climbed. I'm not here to change what works, Cole went on, turning at last to sweep the rest of the room, releasing her, and she could breathe again in the space where his attention had been. This studio does the best identity work in the city, and I paid a frankly humbling amount of money to be able to say we about it. What I want is to see the work up close. All of it. Not just the polished decks, the 2 in the morning kitchen table stuff, the ideas that don't have a partner's name attached yet. His eyes came back to her, briefly, deliberately, and away. In my experience, the best thing in the building is usually standing against the wall, wondering why nobody's asked its name. The room made a warm, impressed sound. Priya, 3 feet away, went rigid, and then turned her head very slowly toward Nora with an expression of dawning, delighted horror. Nora stared at the floor. At the pale wood, at the melting ring her cup had left, at her own sandaled feet, at anything that was not the man she had kissed, to escape her ex, now standing at the front of her entire professional life, quoting her own accidental confession back at her like a man laying a card face up on the table. Well, she thought, with the flat certainty of a woman whose life had just tilted a great deal more than half a degree. At least it can't get worse than this. The meeting broke. Chairs scraped. The office exhaled into 40 simultaneous conversations, everyone suddenly very busy, and Nora seized the chaos and made for the corridor. Mock-up boards forgotten, 10 o'clock forgotten. Everything forgotten except the animal need to be anywhere with a door. She didn't make it. Ms. Marlowe's voice, and then Marlowe's hand, steering, the way partners steered you when they decided something about you without asking. There you are. Cole, this is one of our people. Bennett, isn't it? Nora Bennett. She's got the Halvorsen room at 10. I believe you'll want to sit in on that. It's rather a showcase, Nora Bennett, Cole Rhodes repeated, and held out his hand, and the corner of his mouth was doing the thing again, the small private thing, and up close he smelled of clean cotton and cedar and, very faintly, of lime. It's good to finally put a name to the face. She looked at his hand. She looked at his face. Behind him, through the glass, she could see her boards lined up in the sunlit room. 3 years of being support, squared neatly at the corners. The one thing in this building that was entirely, provably hers. Mr. Rhodes, she said, and took his hand, and made her voice as level as a countertop. Welcome to Marlowe and Finch. His grip was warm and steady, and it did not let go quite when a handshake should. Have we met? He asked, so pleasantly, so terribly pleasantly, loud enough for Marlowe, quiet enough to be cruel. You look remarkably familiar. And Nora Bennett, who had come to this summer with a 5-year plan, a squared-off pitch, and an ironclad policy against being surprised, smiled back at the stranger she'd kissed and understood, with her stomach somewhere around her sandals, that going back was no longer on the menu. No, she said, I'm sure I'd remember. His eyebrows lifted a fraction. Somewhere down the hall a printer woke and began to hum, and the smell of hot toner drifted into the corridor, and the clock above the reception desk clicked over to 9:41. And she had 19 minutes to walk into that glass room and give the pitch of her life to a table that now, impossibly, included the one man in the world who already knew what she tasted like. Of course, Cole Rhodes said softly, releasing her hand at last. My mistake. And then, just before he turned to follow Marlowe toward the conference room, lo, only for her, 11 seconds. Miss Bennett, 9:41 now. I'd hurry. The glass room was full of light and full of men. Nora walked in at 9:58 with her boards under her arm and her pulse in her ears. And she did the thing she always did before a pitch. She set her feet, she squared the first board against the credenza twice, and she made her face into a countertop. Marlowe took the head of the table. Halvorsen's people filed in, a marketing director named Ruth with reading glasses on a chain, a younger man who never stopped typing, and Halvorsen himself, silver-haired, unhurried. A man who had built a chain of garden centers into an empire and still smelled faintly of cut grass, as if he'd walked the aisles that morning before coming. And Cole Rhodes took the chair against the window, angled it a quarter turn, and sat where the sun would be at his back and full on her face. Don't mind me, he said to the room, spreading his hands. I'm only here to watch. He was looking at her when he said it. Whenever you're ready, Nora, Marlowe said, already checking his phone. She was ready. She had been ready for 9 days. She clicked the first board up onto the easel and began. And for a mercy, the work took over the way work always did. The color story, the mark that folded down to a single leaf that read at thumbnail size and read again on the side of a delivery van. The reason a garden company should look less like a laboratory and more like a hand pressing a seed into warm soil. Her voice found its floor. The room leaned in. Ruth uncapped a pen. The idea, Nora said, turning the board, is that you already own the best feeling in retail. Nobody walks out of a garden center angry. People walk out carrying something alive. So the identity shouldn't sell plants. It should sell the 11 seconds before you get home, when the thing in the back seat is already yours and you're imagining where it goes. She heard the words leave her mouth a half beat too late to stop them. 11 seconds. Across the table, Cole Rhodes made a very small sound, not a laugh, just an exhale through the nose, and looked down at his own folded hands like a man declining to say something. Halvorsen nodded slowly. Ruth wrote it down. Nobody else in the room knew the floor had tilted. Only Nora felt it, that hairline drop. The sense of a private word turned loose in a public place. Go on, Halvorsen said. The back seat. I like the back seat. She went on. She built the whole thing out to its edges, and when she folded the mark down to its final form, the single pressed leaf, the word mark in a green that Ruth immediately called the exact green of the $20 bill I'd hand you for it. The room made the warm, impressed sound, and Marlowe sat up as if he'd grown the idea himself in a window box. That, Halvorsen said, is the first thing anyone's shown me in a year that my daughter wouldn't be embarrassed to see on a tote bag. He turned to Marlowe. Whose is it? And there it was. The question Nora had lain awake 9 nights waiting for. She opened her mouth. It's a team effort, said a voice from the doorway, but I'm glad it's landing. Blake Farron leaned in the frame with a coffee in his hand and the easy ownership of a man who had never once been asked to prove he belonged in a room. He was a senior associate, 34, good teeth, the kind of colleague who forwarded your email to a partner with a note that said great stuff, looping you in on top of it. He'd touched exactly none of the Halvorsen work. He had, Nora happened to know, spent Thursday afternoon at a rooftop bar. Blake, Marlowe said, warmly, come in, wouldn't dream of stealing the moment. Blake came in anyway, set a hand on the back of Nora's chair, not on her, on the chair, a distinction he'd have insisted on, and smiled at Halvorsen. Nora's the engine on this. We just kept the lights on around her. It was almost generous. That was the trick of it. It sounded like credit and functioned like a claim. We and around her and the engine, a word for a thing that runs in the dark under someone else's hood. Nora felt the old reasonableness rise in her like water, the instinct to smile and let it pass and be easy to work with, and she was reaching for it. She had her hand on it, actually. Cole Rhodes said. The room turned. He hadn't moved from his chair by the window. He had his ankle crossed over his knee and his head tilted, and he was looking at Blake with the exact careful, amused expression Nora had first seen over the rim of a tonic glass, except that up close, in the flat July light, she could see now what she'd missed on the roof. The amusement had a floor under it, and the floor was iron. Forgive me, I'm new, Cole said pleasantly, so I'm still learning who did what. When you say we kept the lights on around her, which part was that? The color system? The reduction of the mark? The line about the back seat? A beat. Genuinely asking. I want to know who to keep. Blake's smile held. Barely, it's collaborative. You know how studios, I do. Cole uncrossed his ankle and leaned forward, forearms on the table, and the whole room came with him. I've bought a few, and every one of them had a Blake. He said it lightly, and it went in like a blade between two ribs. Ms. Bennett, the 2 in the morning stuff. Was any of this his? 60 hours ago, she had put her mouth against this man to make herself disappear. Now he had turned the entire lit table toward her and asked her in front of the client to be visible, and she did not know which of the two frightened her more. No, she said. Level A countertop. It wasn't. There it is, Cole said softly, and sat back and let the silence do the rest. Blake laughed, one syllable, and took his hand off her chair. Halvorsen looked between them with the mild interest of a man watching weather change over his garden centers. Marlowe had gone the particular gray of a partner recalculating a hierarchy in real time. Well, Halvorsen said, and stood, and buttoned his jacket. Nora Bennett. Send me the backseat idea in a deck by Friday, and don't let anyone keep the lights on around it. I'd like to give you our account. He paused at the door. The whole thing, not the half with someone else's name on it. He was gone before she could answer, Ruth and the typing man trailing after, and the glass room emptied of everyone who mattered until it was only Nora, and her boards, and the sunlight, and the man by the window who had just handed her the thing she'd wanted for 3 years and made it impossible to enjoy in the same breath. Blake left last. At the door he turned. "Nicely done," he said to her, and it was not a compliment, it was a receipt. "You must have made quite the first impression on the new money." His eyes moved to Cole and back, and something in them sharpened, filed itself away. Fast worker. The door side shut behind him. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Down the corridor, the printer was still humming, the air conditioning ticked. Somewhere a phone rang 3 times and stopped. The sun had climbed enough to lay a long, warm bar across the table between them, and dust turned slowly in it, and the whole room smelled of dry erase marker and Halverson's cut grass, and under it, cedar and cotton and lime. "You could have let him have it," Cole said. He was watching her gather her boards. "The credit. You were about to. I was being professional. You were being furniture." He said it without heat, which made it worse. "I've watched a lot of rooms, Ms. Bennett. You don't disappear because you're modest. You disappear on purpose. It's very good. It took me the whole meeting to be sure you were doing it." Her hands went still on the second board. "Why did you buy this firm?" "Straight to it." "All right." He stood, slid his hands into his pockets, wandered to the window where the city ran hot and bright below them, glass towers throwing the sun back at each other, the little green rectangle of the park, 9 floors down, full of people who decided the office wasn't worth it today. "I buy underpriced things. Firms that are worth more than they charge because nobody inside them will say out loud who's carrying it." He glanced back at her. "You're the most underpriced thing in the building. I told you that on Friday, more or less before I knew you worked here. You didn't know." "I did not know." A corner of his mouth. "You'll notice I asked for your name twice and got refused twice. I'm not a man who arranges things and then acts surprised. I bought this place 3 weeks ago. You kissed me on Friday. God has a sense of humor, Miss Bennett, and apparently so does whoever staffed that rooftop mixer." She wanted, badly, to believe the coincidence. She had built her whole life on not being surprised, and the only thing worse than a surprise was a surprise that turned out to be a plan. "Then do me a professional courtesy," she said, squaring the last board, "and forget it happened. The kiss. The everything." He considered her across the bar of sunlight. "That's going to be difficult," he said, "given that you just did the same thing again." "I did not. You hid behind me." He said it gently, and it stopped her cold. "Friday, you hid behind a stranger to get away from a man. Just now, you were about to hide behind a whole studio to get away from your own name. I only did the same thing I did on the roof." He shrugged, an easy roll of the shoulder. "I stood still and let you use me. Except this time, I'd rather you didn't need to." The words got in under her ribs the way the "are you all right" had, into the locked place, and she hated how precisely he aimed. She smoothed her sleeve twice, a small tug, and saw him notice it, saw him file it beside everything else he was quietly collecting about her. "I don't need anything from you, Mr. Rhodes," she said. "I need my deck by Friday, and I need the credit to stick, and I need you to sit at your window and watch, since that's what you said you came to do." "Fair," he inclined his head, entirely unbothered, which was somehow the most infuriating thing he had done yet. "Watch and keep. I've watched. Now I'm deciding what to keep." He crossed to the door and paused with his hand on the glass, and the amusement came back up into his face like a light behind frosted glass. "For the record. On the roof, the 11 seconds. Wherever else you may have said it, to a friend, on a phone, in some kitchen I've never seen, I wasn't there for it. And I couldn't tell you where or when. I said it in the meeting. Same number, 2 different rooms, no way for me to know." He opened the door. "You've been trying to work out how I knew since 9:40. I didn't. It's just a number people say." He left her with it, which was, she would think later, the cruelest and kindest thing he could have done, because now she'd never be sure. Priya was waiting in the corridor with 2 fresh iced coffees and the expression of a woman who had heard everything through a glass wall and would require full disclosure by lunch. "So," Priya said, falling into step, pressing a cold cup into Nora's hand. "You got the account, I got the account. And the new boss defended you to your face in front of the client and reduced Blake Farron to a damp linen napkin, which I would have paid actual money to witness, and which I did, in fact, witness, because that wall is glass and I have no shame. Priya took a triumphant sip. And he is the roof man. He is the roof man. The human shield is your boss. The human shield, Nora said, pushing open the door to the little kitchen where the coffee was good and the window looked out over the fire escape, and the hot, bright canyon of the street owns a third of my human shield. Yes, Priya set her cup down. Nora, this is the best thing that has ever happened to another person, and I get to watch it up close. Then, softer, reading her, you're not happy. I got everything I wanted this morning. That's not what I asked. Nora leaned against the counter. Through the window, the July heat shimmered off the tar paper roofs, and a pigeon walked the rail of the fire escape with great self-importance, and down in the street a bus exhaled and pulled away, and the whole city went on being enormous and indifferent, while her small, careful life came apart at the seams in a room made of glass. I spent 3 years, she said, learning to want things I could control. A pitch, a title, a table. Things you get by being early and being right and never ever being surprised. She turned the cold cup in her hands, a ring of damp on the counter, and I got the account by being surprised. By him, in public. And now I can't tell if I earned it or if he handed it to me because he liked kissing a stranger on a roof. And I will never be able to tell. And neither will Blake, and neither will Marlowe, and that's, her voice caught. She pressed her lips together. That's the whole problem with being handed things. You never get to know. Priya was quiet a moment. Then, ask him. Ask him what? Ask him to his face whether he'd have backed you if you'd never touched him. Watch what he does with his hands when he answers. Priya shrugged. You're a woman who reads people for a living, Nora. You put the truth of a whole company into one green leaf. You'll know if he lies. It was good advice. It was, in fact, exactly the advice Nora would have given anyone else, which was why she resented it. She opened her mouth to say so. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced down, expecting Halvorson's office, or Marlowe, or the deck template, and the name on the screen went through her like the cold from an open freezer on a hot day. Trevor, don't, Priya said, watching her face. Whatever it is, don't. Nora answered it. Of course she answered it. 2 years of training didn't wash off in a weekend. Trevor, Nora. Hey, there she is. His voice filled her ear, warm and easy and utterly certain of its welcome. The voice of a man who had never once been told no, in a way he'd had to hear. Don't hang up, okay? 1 minute. I saw you Friday. At the thing. You looked great, you always look great. I tried to come say hi, and you kind of vanished on me. I had somewhere to be. Sure, listen. A. Russell, the sound of him moving somewhere private, and she knew that sound. She'd spent 2 years learning the acoustics of Trevor deciding to be sincere. This is going to sound out of nowhere. But I heard, through the industry, you know how it is. I heard your shop just got new ownership. Cole Rhodes. The kitchen went very still. Outside, the pigeon took off in a clap of wings. How do you know that name? Nora said. Because I know Cole. Everybody in my world knows Cole. A laugh, pleased, proprietary, we go back. He's done a couple raises with my firm. We did his last fund, actually. I was in those rooms. Small world, right? Tiny, A beat, and then the pivot, smooth as oat milk, which is why I'm calling. I want to reconnect, Nora, professionally, maybe more. I don't know, I've been doing a lot of thinking. But professionally for sure. Because if you've got Cole Rhodes signing your checks now, then you and I are about to be in a lot of the same rooms. And I would really hate, for the first thing your new boss hears about your judgment to come from me by accident. You know how these things travel. The threat was so softly wrapped, she almost missed it. Almost, she was, after all, a woman who read people for a living. Are you threatening me, Trevor? What? No, God, no, I'm inviting you to dinner. Wounded now, the fast pivot to injury that had ended 100 of their arguments in his favor. I'm trying to be a friend here. Cole's a friend. I can put in a good word, or not. That's all I'm saying. I'd rather it be a good word. Wednesday? There's a place on the water, you'd love it. They do the little, I have to go, Nora said. I have a deck by Friday. She ended the call and set the phone face down on the counter. Very gently, the way you set down a glass you've realized has a crack in it. Priya was staring at her. What? She said. What was that face? I've never seen that face. Nora. Trevor knows Cole. Nora's voice came out flat and far away. Personally, his firm raised money for Cole. They were in rooms together. He called to tell me that if I don't have dinner with him, he'll tell my new boss I've got bad judgment. She looked up. And the funny thing, the genuinely funny thing, Pry, is that I do. I have terrible judgment. I kissed my new boss on a roof 40 hours ago. Trevor doesn't even know the true version, and the true version is worse than anything he could invent. Priya sat down slowly on the little kitchen stool. Okay, so we think about this like grown-ups. She pressed 2 fingers to the bridge of her nose. 1, Trevor's bluffing. Trevor is always bluffing, it's his whole personality. He threatens people with things he doesn't actually have the standing to do. And 2, Priya lowered her hand. 2 is worse. 2 is, what if he's not bluffing? And what if Cole already knows Trevor? And what if the man who bought your firm and defended you to a client and asked twice for your name? What if Trevor's already had that conversation? What if the reason Cole was so interested in the woman who kissed him on the roof is that he already knew exactly who she was? Because his old associate Trevor pointed you out at the mixer in the first place? The kitchen tilted. Nora put her hand flat on the cool counter to steady it, and the counter was real, and the ring of damp under her cup was real, and the heat coming off the window was real, but the ground she had built her whole careful life on was not, suddenly, real at all. She had assembled a conspiracy out of a coincidence once already this morning and been wrong. She could not tell anymore, from inside it, which was which. That was the thing about being surprised. Once it started, you couldn't find the wall to put your back against. He said it was a coincidence, Nora said. This morning, he looked right at me and said God has a sense of humor, and there was no way for him to know. He said it like he wanted me to believe it. Men who want you to believe things are the ones you have to watch, Priya said quietly. You taught me that. Through the glass wall of the kitchen, down the length of the sunlit floor, a door opened. Cole Rhodes came out of the office that until this morning had belonged to a man named Finch, and he was rolling his sleeves to the elbow against the heat, and he had a folder under his arm, and he was crossing the floor toward the kitchen with the unhurried authority of a man who owned a third of everything he could see, and he was looking, the whole way, without pretending otherwise, directly at Nora. He's coming here, Priya breathed. He's coming to the kitchen. Nobody with an office that big comes to the kitchen. Nora, what do you want me to do? Nora watched him come. She thought about the way his hand had rested at the small of her back on the roof, light, playing along, asking nothing. She thought about Trevor's voice saying, we go back, tiny world. And about the way Cole had said, I don't arrange things and then act surprised, which was exactly the sentence a man would use if he had in fact arranged something and needed you not to look at it. She thought, I could ask him right now. I could watch his hands. Stay, she said to Priya, and pushed off the counter and straightened the hem of her sleeve twice, and turned to face the door as it opened, and the smell of cedar and cotton and still, faintly, impossibly, lime came into the little room with the good coffee and the hot bright window. Ms. Bennett, Cole set the folder on the counter between them, unopened, and she could not read the front of it, and he did not move his hand off it. I've just had the strangest phone call. His eyes moved over her face, careful, cataloging, and the amusement was gone from them entirely now, the way it had been gone on the roof when she'd walked to the elevator without looking back. From a man who seems to think he knows you. And me. And a great deal about both of us at once. A pause, and under it that iron floor. I think you and I should talk about Trevor Landry before either of us signs anything. Behind him, the clock above reception clicked over, and the printer stopped humming, and the whole hot morning held its breath. Nora looked at the folder. She did not touch it. There's nothing to talk about, she said. A man I used to know called to be unpleasant. It happens to me roughly weekly. You don't need to open a file on it. I didn't open the file. He did. Cole slid the folder an inch toward her across the counter, still with 2 fingers on its corner, still not letting it go. Through the kitchen's glass wall, the office had gone artificially busy. 40 people pretending to read spreadsheets while watching a man with a large office stand in the small room. He called my assistant twice before 9, left a number, called it a courtesy heads-up between friends. Then he called me directly, which is a thing people do when they want you to feel watched. His jaw moved. I've spent a lot of years learning to hear the difference between a friend and a man practicing to be a problem. Trevor Landry is the second thing. He said you go back. We were in 3 rooms together across 2 years. Cole finally lifted his fingers off the folder and set his palm flat on the counter instead, the way a person steadies himself. His firm did a raise for one of my funds. He was junior. He talked in every meeting and said nothing in any of them, and he called it relationship building. That is the entire extent of what Trevor Landry and I go back. He tilted his head. Which is to say, not far and not fondly. Priya, wisely, had become part of the refrigerator. Nora could feel her there, 3 feet away, radiating the specific stillness of a person who intends to remember every word. Then why does he think he can spend you like a gift card, Nora said, with me as the balance. That got him. Not a laugh, a short exhale through the nose, the same sound he'd made in the meeting when she'd said the back seat. Because he doesn't know me, Cole said. And I think, until about 40 hours ago, he assumed he knew you. His eyes were steady, and the amusement had not come back into them. What did he offer you, Miss Bennett? People like Trevor always lead with the wrapped thing before they show you the other thing. Outside, the heat pressed white against the window, and a cloud went over the sun, and the whole kitchen dimmed a half shade. Then brightened. Nora turned her cold cup a slow quarter turn on the counter, ring of damp widening under it, and made a decision she would examine later and never quite justify. Dinner Wednesday, she said. On the water. Where they do the little something, he didn't finish the sentence. And a promise that if I don't go, the first thing my new boss hears about my judgment comes from him. By accident, the way these things travel. She met his eyes, his words. I'm quoting. Something moved across Cole's face and set. It was not anger, exactly. It was colder and more organized than anger, the expression of a man reading a contract he already intends to break. He wants you to believe he holds a card, Cole said, so that you spend Wednesday night proving to him that he does. Does he hold a card? He holds a phone and a grudge, a pause. Whether that's a card depends entirely on what you did that you'd rather I not hear about. And there it was. The whole hot morning narrowing to a single lit point, the number 11 blinking somewhere behind her sternum. Nora held his gaze and thought about the roof, about her palm flat on a chest she'd never touched, about the elevator doors closing on gardenias while she told herself she'd never see him again. She thought, he's asking. He's actually asking, in front of Priya, in a kitchen, with a client's account still warm on the table. Nothing that touches the work, she said. Level, A countertop. Everything he could tell you is old and small, and none of it is about a leaf that folds down to read at thumbnail size. Cole watched her a moment longer. Then he picked up the folder, tucked it back under his arm unopened, and she understood the folder had never been the point. It had been a prop, a thing to set down so she'd watch the hands and not the eyes. Good answer, he said. Wrong one, but good. He turned for the door, then stopped with his hand on the frame and glanced back, and for 1 second he looked less like a man who owned a third of the building and more like the person who'd rested a hand at the small of her back and asked nothing. You don't go to dinner Wednesday, Miss Bennett, not because I'm telling you not to, because you don't owe a receipt to anyone who threatens you with your own name. The corner of his mouth. You've got a deck by Friday. I'd hurry. He left. Priya detached herself from the refrigerator, exhaled the breath she'd been keeping since 9:40, and said, in the small voice of a person who has witnessed something structural, his hands didn't lie, Nora. I watched. The whole time. His hands didn't lie. I know, Nora said. That was the trouble. She'd watched too. The deck ate the next 2 days. She built it at the office because the office in high summer emptied by 6, everyone fleeing to rooftops and river walks and the cool dim of bars, and by 7 the floor belonged to her and the cleaners and the long amber light coming in low and horizontal across the pale wood. She liked it then. The plants she watered breathed out their green damp smell, the air conditioning finally caught up and the glass stopped sweating, the city below cooled from white to gold to a deep bruised blue, and the delivery vans went home, and it was just Nora and the backseat idea and the single pressed leaf, folding down, reading and reading again. On Tuesday, at 7:30, Cole Rhodes appeared on the other side of her glass with 2 paper bags and a look of a man who has decided something. "I'm told," he said, coming in without asking, which she was learning was simply how he entered rooms, that the best work in this building happens at a kitchen table at 2 in the morning. "I can't offer you 2 in the morning. I have a call with people who think in a time zone that hates me." He set the bags on her desk, and the smell rose out of them, warm and sharp and green, grilled corn, lime again, coriander, something with chili that made the back of her throat prickle. "But I can offer you dinner at 7:30, which is the same idea with better lighting. I'm working, I can see that. I'm not going to help. I'm terrible at this. I once approved a logo because it felt expensive, which is the kind of note that makes people like you contemplate a new career." He pulled the second chair around to the far side of the credenza, well out of her light, and sat and unwrapped his own food and did not look at her boards. "Pretend I'm the window. You said I was good at watching. She should have sent him away." She had a policy about men who arrived with food and stayed. Instead, she found herself pulling the first bag toward her, and the corn was still warm, and the lime was so exactly the taste of Friday night that she nearly laughed, and the office hummed its low evening hum around them, and outside the sky did its slow, expensive fade. "You did that on purpose," she said, holding up the lime wedge. "Did what?" "The lime. You think you're subtle. I think I'm extremely subtle," Cole said, "which is why it's working." He said it lightly, without looking up, and it landed exactly where the roof had landed, in the locked place, and she hated the warmth that came with it. They worked, or she worked, and he watched, for an hour that didn't feel like an hour. He asked one question every 15 minutes, and every question was better than she expected. Not feels expensive at all, but why the leaf and not the seed? When the seed is the promise, and the leaf is only the proof. She answered it, and then she answered it again, better, because his question had found a seam she'd papered over at 2 in the morning, and by the time she'd fixed it, the deck was stronger, and she was annoyed about how much stronger. "You're not terrible at this," she said, accusingly. "I'm terrible at making it. I'm not terrible at seeing it." He leaned back, one ankle crossing over his knee, and the low light caught the fading sunburn on his nose. "That's the whole reason I buy firms instead of starting them. I can hear when a thing is true. I just can't build the thing." A pause, and something quieter came into it. "It's a lonely way to be useful, if you want to know. Standing at the back of every room, being certain about other people's work." The sentence sat between them in the warm dark. Nora looked at him and understood, with the small, cold click of recognition, that she had been describing herself for 3 years in almost those exact words. The wall, the support, the engine in the dark under someone else's hood, and that he had just handed his own version of it across the credenza without seeming to notice he'd done it. 2 people who disappeared on purpose, comparing methods. "That's the most anyone said to me in this building in 3 years, she said, "and you've owned it since Monday. Give the others time. They're recalculating." He gathered his wrappers, neat, and stood, and the moment folded itself back down to a manageable size. At the door, he paused. "The deck's better than it was at 7. You know that. I know. Say thank you." "For the corn," Nora said, "or for the note?" The corner of his mouth. Dealer's choice. "Thank you for the corn," she said, and watched. With a small private satisfaction she'd examine later, the surprise go across his face. The novelty of being teased by the woman who'd made her whole face a countertop for 2 days, before he laughed, once, low, and left her to the amber light and the deck and the dangerous warm feeling of having, briefly, not been alone at the back of the room. She finished the deck Thursday at noon and sent it to Halverson's office 2 full days early, and for about 90 minutes she was happy in the clean, uncomplicated way she'd been chasing for 3 years. Then, Blake Farron knocked on the glass of the small conference room where she was eating a sandwich alone, and leaned in and smiled with all his good teeth, and said, "Got a second?" Something you'll want to see before Marlo does. The sandwich turned to paper in her mouth. I'm eating. You'll want to not be. He came in and set his phone on the table, face up, and slid it across the pale wood the exact way Cole had slid the folder, and she understood that this was a gesture men in this building had all learned from the same school. The placing of a thing on a surface so that the placing is the threat. A friend sent me this. From the Summer Mixer Friday. He's building a little recap, faces, the industry, who was there. Blake's voice was warm and terrible. You were there. She looked at the phone. She did not want to. She looked. It was a photograph taken from across the rooftop, slightly high, the way phones catch a scene when someone lifts one over a crowd to get the string lights. The lights were in it, and the potted olive trees, and the blur of the emerald woman, and in the center of the frame. Lit gold and unmistakable, was Nora Bennett with her palm flat against the chest of a man in a charcoal? No, on Friday it had been the light blazer, but the man was unmistakable all the same. Dark hair, pushed back. One hand at the small of her back, kissing him. The kitchen behind her sternum dropped through the floor. Now, Blake said pleasantly. Retrieving the phone before she could do anything to it? I don't know who that is. Can't quite see. But it's a hell of a coincidence, isn't it? That our brand new owner asked twice for your name on Monday like he'd never seen it, and defended you to a client like his life depended on it, and here you are on Friday saying hello to somebody who's about your new boss's exact height. He tucked the phone away. People are going to look at this and do math, Nora. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm saying it's math. She made her face a countertop. It cost her everything she had. What do you want, Blake? I want the Halverson account, Blake said without a flicker, because he had never once in his life been asked to prove he belonged in a room, and it had left him beautifully, catastrophically honest about his own wants. I want to be the name on it when it goes out. You'll still do the work, you're the engine, I meant that, I always mean that. But the account goes out under me, and this photo goes to my friend's little recap and nowhere else, and everybody keeps their nice clean story about the talented girl who earned it. He straightened, or the account stays yours. And the photo makes the rounds, and Halvorsen, who is, and I cannot stress this enough, a 70-year-old man who sells begonias to grandmothers, gets to decide whether he wants his brand attached to a studio where the work goes to whoever's kissing the owner. He smiled. Your call. Take the afternoon. He left the door open behind him, which was its own small cruelty, and the office noise came in. A phone, a laugh, the printer, the ordinary hot Thursday sounds of a place where her whole careful life was, right now, quietly coming apart at a seam she had sewn herself on a rooftop with her own two hands. Nora sat very still. The sandwich sat in front of her. Outside the glass, the summer went on being enormous and bright and indifferent, and she thought, with the flat clarity that arrived in her only at the very worst moments, he was right. Cole was right. Trevor holds a phone and a grudge. And now so does Blake. And the card is real. And I made it. And I handed it to them. She did not go to Cole. That was the thing she would turn over later, in the dark, that her first instinct, trained into her over 2 years and reinforced over 3, was not to go to the person who'd rested a hand at the small of her back and asked nothing, but to solve it alone, quietly, the way she solved everything, so that no one would ever have to know she'd needed help. She called Priya instead. He has a photo, she said, when Priya picked up. Of the roof, of the kiss. Blake has it. He wants the account, or he sends it to the whole industry with a caption that says I earned it on my knees. Her voice did not shake. She was proud, distantly, of that. And the worst part, the genuinely worst part, is that from the outside, it's a perfect story. New owner. Nobody knows his name on Monday. Defends the girl he was kissing on Friday. Gives her the account by Wednesday. There's no version of the truth I can tell that sounds less damning than the lie. Priya was quiet for a moment. Then, carefully, where's Cole right now? In his office. Why? Because there's a question you've been not asking since Monday, and I think it just became the only question. Priya's voice was gentle and relentless. The voice of the one person who'd never once let Nora hide behind, reasonable. You keep saying it's a perfect story from the outside, but you're on the inside. So, 2 doors. Nora, door 1. It really is a coincidence. Cole bought the firm 3 weeks ago. He kissed a stranger Friday. God has a sense of humor. And this is just a terrible, unlucky, beautiful mess. Door 2, don't. Door 2, he knew. Trevor pointed you out at the mixer. Cole recognized the name when he bought the place, or before. And everything since Monday, the corn, the note, the lime, I don't have anything to hide, watch my hands, every single bit of it is a man who is very, very good at buying underpriced things, convincing an underpriced thing that it wanted to be bought. A breath. You told me you can't tell if you earned the account or if he handed it to you. Well, the photo just made that the most expensive question of your life. Because if it's door 2, if he engineered any of it, then Blake's caption isn't a lie. It's just early. The line hummed. Outside, a cloud crossed the sun and the room dimmed and did not brighten again. The sky over the tar paper roofs had gone the flat white gray of a summer afternoon, deciding whether to storm. I don't know which door it is, Nora said. That's everything, Pry. I read people for a living. I put a whole company into one green leaf. And I cannot read the one man whose reading matters, because I want door 1 so badly I can't trust my own eyes on it. Her thumb found the hem of her sleeve, tugged, twice, and I can't ask him. Because if I ask him and he lies, he's good enough that I'll believe him. And if I ask him and he tells the truth, I still won't be able to tell. Then, don't ask him, Priya said. Test him. Give him a thing to do that only a door 1 man would do and only a door 2 man would refuse. And watch what he does with his hands. A pause. You have until the account goes out. When's that? Friday tomorrow, Nora closed her eyes. Halvorsen wants it under a name by end of day tomorrow. Then, you have 1 night, Priya said. God, Nora, you have 1 night to find out whether the best thing that's happened to you is also the worst. Nora ended the call and sat in the dimming room with the untouched sandwich and the storm gathering over the city, and she thought about tests and doors, and the exact way a hand rests at the small of a back when it is asking for nothing. And she understood that she was about to do something she had spent 3 years and 2 relationships promising herself she would never do again, which was to hand a man the truth and watch what he did with it. She found Cole at 6:30, when the floor had emptied and the storm had finally broken and the rain came down in warm gray ropes against the glass, sheeting the city out of existence 9 floors below. He was standing at his window, Finch's old window, the biggest in the building, with his sleeves rolled and his back to the door and a phone against his ear, and she heard the last of it before he knew she was there. Then tell them the number's the number, he was saying, low, flat, the iron floor fully exposed. I don't renegotiate because a man got nervous. No, because if I do it once, every Trevor in the city learns the number moves. A pause. That's fine. Let him be unhappy. Unhappy men are cheap. He ended the call and stood a moment in the rain light and then said, without turning, You've been standing there 4 seconds. Ms. Bennett, in this building, that's a record for someone not announcing themselves. Trevor, she said. It wasn't a question. Trevor. He turned. In the gray stormlight, the amusement was gone from his face, and something more tired had taken its place, something she hadn't seen before, and it made him look, for the first time, like an actual person, and not a man who owned a third of everything. He's called 4 times since Monday. He's offering me context on you. He's offering it hard. A man doesn't work that hard to give away information he thinks is free. He studied her. You didn't go to dinner Wednesday. No. Good. He waited. But that's not why you're here. The rain drummed. The office lights had come up amber against the storm and thrown their 2 reflections onto the glass. Hers by the door, his by the window, the drowned city between them. There's a photo, Nora said. She said it plainly. The way she'd learned true things were the only weapons she trusted. From the roof. Of us. Blake has it. He wants the Halvorsen account under his name by tomorrow, or he sends it to the industry with a story attached. The story where I got the account because I kissed the man who bought the firm. She watched his hands. They were still. perfectly still, one resting on the back of a chair. It's a good story, Mr. Rhodes. That's the problem with it. It doesn't need to be true to end me. It only needs to be believable, and it is entirely, perfectly believable, because 60 hours before you gave me the best account of my career, I had my mouth on yours on a roof, and there's a photograph. For a long moment, he did not move at all. The rain filled the silence. And then, Cole Rhodes did the thing she had not planned for, the thing that broke her careful test to pieces before she could even set it. He crossed the room, and he did not reach for her, and he did not smile, and he said, very quietly, "Show me who took it. I'll have it out of every phone it's on by morning." Blake included. I can do that. I have the money and the lawyers and the exact kind of unkindness it takes. His jaw tightened. Say the word, and it's gone. And there it was, the answer to a question she hadn't asked, arriving in the shape of an offer so good it terrified her. Because a door one man would make himself small and say, "I'm so sorry I did this to you, how do I fix it?" And a door two man, a man who had engineered every bit of it, a man who bought underpriced things, would say exactly this, would offer to make the evidence disappear, would offer to make the whole inconvenient truth of the roof go away with money and lawyers and unkindness, so that the story he was building could go on being told the way he wanted it told. "No," Nora said, and stepped back from him, and her voice came out cold as the freezer cold that had gone through her when Trevor's name lit up her phone. "No, you will not make it disappear." Nora, because that's the tell, isn't it? She was shaking now, and she let herself, because there was no one left to be a countertop for. A photo of the truth exists, and your first instinct, your very first instinct, no hesitation, hands perfectly steady, is to make the truth go away. Not to stand next to it. Not to say, yes, that happened, and it means nothing about her work. To make it vanish. Which is exactly what a man would do if the story mattered more to him than I did. If I was a thing he bought. Her breath caught. Trevor pointed me out to you at that mixer. Didn't he? That's the context he keeps calling to sell. He's not selling you information. He's reminding you of a debt. He told you who I was on Friday, before the roof, and you let me kiss you, and you let me believe it was luck, and you have spent every hour since being so good, so exactly good, the corn and the lime and the lonely way to be useful. All of it, aimed like a leaf that folds down to read at any size. Stop it came out of him rough, and his hands were not still anymore. One had come up, open, halfway between them, and she watched it and could not read it, and hated that she couldn't. Nora, stop. That's not. You're building a conspiracy out of a coincidence again. You did it Monday with the 11 seconds and you were wrong. Or I was right, she said, and you're very good at the word coincidence. The rain came harder. Tell me you didn't know who I was on that roof. Look at me and tell me Trevor never said my name to you before Friday. And do it without offering to buy a single thing. And Cole Rhodes opened his mouth and closed it, and in the half-second of that silence, the half-second where an innocent man says of course not instantly, and a guilty man calculates, Nora saw his eyes move, just once, to the phone still warm in his hand, the phone that had just been saying Trevor's name, and she felt the last floor go out from under her careful life. It's not that simple, he said. Which was, she thought, standing in the drowned amber light with the whole city rained out of the window, and the account, and the credit, and the leaf, and the lime, all coming apart in her hands at once, which was the only sentence in the world that could have been worse than yes. Then it's simple for me, Nora said, and she was already at the door, already reaching for the handle, her voice level again because the shaking had passed into something colder and more permanent. Blake gets the account, tomorrow under his name. You can't be serious. It's the only version where nobody gets to say you handed it to me. She got the door open. The rain noise rushed up the corridor to meet her. You wanted to know what to keep, Mr. Rhodes. Keep the firm. Keep the photo since you're so good at making things vanish. But you don't get to keep me telling myself it was ever real. She stepped through. I'd say I'll never see you again, but I've made that mistake in this building once already this week. She walked to the elevator with her chin level and her hands steady and her whole face burning, exactly as she had walked away from him on the roof 3 days and a lifetime ago, and this time she did not have to remind herself not to look back. because she already knew what she'd see. A man who had not followed her, standing at the biggest window in the building, with a phone in his hand, and Trevor's name still in the room, deciding, the way he decided everything, what it was worth to him to come after her. The doors closed on the smell of rain and cedar. Nora leaned her head against the cool brushed steel and shut her eyes, and thought, with the flat certainty of a woman whose entire life had just come apart at a seam she'd sewn herself, it's not that simple. 4 words. She'd asked him for 2, of course not, and he'd given her 4, and the 2 extra were the whole story. Somewhere above her, 9 floors up, a phone was ringing again, and it would be Trevor, and this time she understood it with the cold, sick clarity of the elevators falling. This time, Cole Rhodes was going to answer it. The rain had stopped by the time she got home, but the city still ran with it. Gutters loud, awnings dripping, the whole hot block steaming faintly under the streetlights as the pavement gave back its warmth. Nora stood at her own window with the sash pushed high and let the wet green smell of washed summer come in over the fire escape, and she did not cry. Because crying was a thing you did when you'd been surprised, and she had promised herself years ago she would never be surprised again, and look how that had gone. Priya let herself in at 9 with a key and a paper bag and no announcement. "I'm not going to say I told you so," Priya said, setting the bag on the counter, "because I didn't tell you anything, I just held things up to the light. Which is a service. I brought dumplings. Eat one before you tell me you can't. I'm giving Blake the account." Nora said it to the window. "I called Marlowe's assistant an hour ago. I asked for 15 minutes tomorrow morning. First thing." The bag stopped rustling. "No," Priya said. "It's the only clean version, Pry. It's the only one where nobody in that building gets to spend the rest of my career doing the math Blake did. Account goes under Blake. Photo goes nowhere. I keep my head down, I keep my work, and in a year, nobody remembers." She pressed her thumb to the sleeve of her t-shirt, tugged it twice, and made herself stop. "It's reasonable. It's disappearing." Priya came and stood beside her at the window, close, the way she'd stood beside her through worse and smaller things. "Nora, you've been disappearing on purpose since I met you, and I let you, because you were so good at it that it looked like modesty. But a man you kissed for 11 seconds saw through it in one meeting. He said it out loud. And now you're about to prove him right. You're about to hand your name to Blake Farrand, so you never have to defend it. Because defending it means telling the truth. Then tell the truth." Nora turned. Below them a bus hissed through standing water. A couple ran laughing under one shared jacket toward the dry mouth of the subway. The whole drowned city went on being enormous and indifferent to the small ruin in her chest. "The truth ends me faster than the lie, Pry. That's the trap. If I say Blake's telling a story, it's his word and a photo against mine. If I say yes, I kissed him, but I did it before I knew who he was and none of it touched the work, who believes that? It's the most convenient thing a woman could possibly claim. So don't claim it." Priya's voice was very quiet. Claim the part that isn't convenient. Stand next to the ugly true thing instead of making it vanish. She held Nora's eyes. "You told me that's the tell. Yesterday, in the rain, you said Cole's first instinct was to make the truth disappear, and that's how you knew you couldn't trust him. Well, a breath. Whose instinct is it right now?" Nora opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Outside, a car alarm 2 streets over started, ran through its whole indignant scale, and gave up. The dumplings cooled in their bag. And somewhere under Nora's ribs, in the locked place Where Are You All Right had landed on a rooftop 3 days and a lifetime ago. Something she'd been sitting on very hard for 2 years shifted, and cracked, and let a little cold air in. "I do the same thing he does," she said slowly. "You do exactly the same thing he does. You just do it with silence instead of lawyers." Priya squeezed her arm. "So tomorrow you can walk in and hand Blake your name so the truth stays buried. Or you can walk in and dig it up yourself, in front of everyone before anyone else gets to. One of those is disappearing. The other one is the first brave thing I've watched you do since the roof. And the roof, let's be honest, was technically an escape maneuver." That surprised the ghost of a laugh out of her, small and wet. It was tactical. It was cinematic. Priya smiled. "Eat a dumpling. Then decide what kind of woman shows up at 9. Nora ate the dumpling. It was still warm, and the ginger caught at the back of her throat, sharp and clean, and she thought about a green leaf that folded down to read at any size, and a folder set on a counter so you'd watch the hands and not the eyes, and 4 words in a rained-out office, it's not that simple, that she had walked away from before she'd let him finish being simple about them. She had not, she realized, actually let him answer. She had done to Cole exactly what Trevor had done to her for 2 years, decided what he meant, and left through the door before he could argue. "Pre," she said. "What time is it?" Nora walked into Marlowe and Finch at 8:40 the next morning, into a building scrubbed bright by the storm, the glass washed clear, the plants she watered breathing out their damp green in the early sun, the whole floor smelling of rain, cooled air, and floor cleaner, and somebody's first hot coffee. She had not slept. She had, instead, built a different kind of deck at her kitchen table at 2 in the morning, one with no leaf in it and no color story, just the truth, laid out in the order she meant to say it. Blake was already there. Of course he was. He was leaning on the corner of the reception desk in a fresh linen jacket, telling the receptionist something that made her laugh the way people laughed at Blake, obligingly, and he saw Nora come in and pushed off the desk with the loose confidence of a man holding a photograph. "Big morning," he said. "You look like you've decided something." "I have." She kept walking. "Where's Marlowe?" "His office." "With the new money." Blake fell into step, easy, proprietary, and lowered his voice to the register men used when they thought they'd already won. Smart, by the way, getting there early. "We can keep it clean. You tell Marlowe the account's mine. I keep our friend's little recap tasteful. Everybody's happy. I really do think you're the engine, Nora. I've always Blake said that." "I'm going to tell them the truth," Nora said. "All of it. The roof, the kiss, who I was hiding from and why, before you get the chance to tell it worse." Blake stopped walking. For the first time since she'd known him, the good teeth disappeared. "You won't," he said. "You'd be handing them the story yourself. Nora, that's suicide for your," he caught himself. "Changed the word the way careful men changed words. That's the end of you here. You know that. It might be." She had reached Marlowe's door. Through the glass, she could see Marlowe behind his desk, and Cole in the chair across from him, sleeves rolled, and she saw Cole see her, and she watched him go very still. But it's the end of your photo either way, because a photo only works if the thing in it is a secret, and I'm about to make it the most boring known fact in this building. She put her hand on the door. "You should have sent it Thursday, Blake. You waited a day so you could enjoy owning me. That was the mistake. You gave me a night to stop being ownable." She opened the door. Marlowe looked up. "Flustered, Nora. We're in the middle of—" "I need 10 minutes, Nora said. "And I need Blake in the room, because half of what I'm about to say is his." She stepped in. The office smelled of Marlowe's bergamot cologne and hot paper and, under it, cedar. She did not look at Cole yet. She could not until she'd said it, or she'd lose the thread. 3 days ago, I kissed a man I'd never met. On a rooftop, at the summer mixer, in front of 40 people. I did it to get away from my ex-boyfriend, Trevor Landry, who had cornered me and wouldn't take a hint, and the nearest exit was a stranger by the railing. So I used him. 11 seconds. Then I left without giving my name. The room had gone absolutely silent. Blake had come in behind her. She heard the door click. The stranger, Nora said, was Cole Rhodes. She made herself say it level, a countertop, one last time, for control and not for hiding. I didn't know that. He didn't know who I was either. I found out Monday, in the all hands, when he walked through that door as the man who'd bought the firm. That's the whole coincidence. It's absurd. It's the kind of thing you'd cut from a script for being too much. And Blake has a photograph of it, and this morning he offered to keep that photograph private if I handed him the Halvorsen account. Marlowe's mouth opened. No sound arrived. "I'm not handing him the account," Nora went on, and now, finally, she looked at Cole. "And I'm not letting anyone in this building tell a story about how I earned it, because I already know the story you're all going to reach for, and I would rather say the true one out loud, badly myself, than let it be whispered nicely by someone else. The account is mine. The leaf is mine. The line about the back seat is mine. I built it at my kitchen table at 2 in the morning for 3 years running while every partner in this firm forgot my name. And a kiss doesn't unmake that. It just gives small men something to hold. She noticed, not shaking. It was the strangest thing. She had spent her whole life bracing for this exact moment. The moment she stopped being reasonable in a room full of people who preferred her reasonable, and now that it was here, it felt less like falling and more like setting something very heavy down. Blake found his voice. "This is very moving," he said, "but it doesn't change what it looks like." "No," Cole said. "I do that part." He stood. It was the first time he'd moved, and the room turned to him the way rooms did, and Nora watched his hands. She would always, now, watch his hands, and they were not reaching for anything. One went to the back of his neck, briefly, an ordinary, tired gesture she'd never seen him make, and then dropped. "There's a piece, Ms. Bennett doesn't have," Cole said, "because I didn't give it to her, which is the entire thing I did wrong in this, and I've had a long night to name it precisely." He didn't look at Marlowe or Blake. He looked at Nora. 3 weeks ago, I sat through a dinner with people I was raising money alongside. Trevor Landry was there. He'd had a few, and he spent a good part of the evening telling the table about an ex-girlfriend. A designer, he said, cold, thought she was better than the room, made him feel small in his own life. He said her name twice, the way a man does when he wants you to agree she's the problem. A muscle moved in his jaw. I didn't agree, and I didn't care, and I forgot it inside a week. The name was Nora Bennett. The silence changed temperature. So on Friday, Cole went on, low, steady. When a woman put her hand on my chest and kissed me to get away from a man in a pale blazer, I didn't know her. I want that heard clearly, because it's the part that matters and the part that's hardest to believe. I didn't connect a stranger on a roof to a name a bitter man said at a dinner. I connected them Monday. In the corridor, when Marlowe said Nora Bennett out loud, and I understood, all at once, that the woman I hadn't stopped thinking about for 72 hours was the same woman Trevor Landry had tried to poison me against before I ever laid eyes on her, and that the man she'd been hiding from on that roof was him. He turned, at last, to Blake, and the iron floor came all the way up under his voice. That's why I couldn't answer her yesterday when she asked me to swear Trevor never said her name to me before Friday. Because he had. And I'm not a man who says of course not when the honest answer is it's more complicated than that. It cost me the only thing I actually wanted, saying it that way. His eyes cut back to Nora, just for a second, and there was nothing amused in them at all. But I'd rather lose it true than keep it clean. Nora's throat had closed. She held the edge of Marlowe's desk and did not let go. "Trevor's called me 4 times this week," Cole said. Offering context. Offering to confirm, off the record, that Miss Bennett has poor judgment, is difficult, sleeps her way into rooms, the usual inventory a man reaches for when a woman stops finding him necessary. He wanted me to owe him a favor for the warning. He thought that was a card. Cole's voice flattened. I answered the 4th call last night, and I recorded it, because a man who threatens the same person twice does it a 3rd time in writing eventually, and I like to be ready. He said, and I'm quoting, that he could make things very uncomfortable for her with the right people. I'm one of the right people. I found it extremely comfortable. Then I told him the number doesn't move, and I ended the call. Blake had gone the specific gray of a man watching his one card turn into a photograph of himself. "You," Cole said to him, without heat, which was worse, walked into a woman's lunch and offered to sell her silence for an account she built, on the strength of a photo of your new owner. Did you think about that part? At any point? You brought me the picture of my own face and called it leverage. He almost smiled, and didn't. You're fired, Blake, not for the photo. For the arithmetic. I don't keep people who do that math. Marlowe, who had said nothing for 4 full minutes, made a sound like a man surfacing. Cole, we don't. HR has a then loop in HR. Cole's tone gentled a half-degree for the older man. But he doesn't touch the Halvorsen account. And he doesn't touch her, and the photograph goes to nobody. Because I'll have my lawyers explain to his friend with the little recap exactly what it costs to distribute a picture taken to blackmail. That part is genuinely easy. It's the only easy part of this entire week. Blake looked around the room, at Marlowe, who would not meet his eyes, at Nora, who did, at Cole, who was already done with him, and something in his face collapsed inward, the confidence going out of it like air, until he was just a man of 34 in a fresh linen jacket who had never once been asked to prove he belonged, and had finally, catastrophically, been asked. "You're all going to regret how this looks," he tried. "It looks," Nora said, "like the truth. Which I understand is unfamiliar. You'll get used to it." She had not planned to say it. It arrived on its own, dry and clean, and she heard Priya's voice in it and was glad. "Goodbye, Blake." He left. The door did not slam, it sighed, the way that door always sighed. And then it was Marlowe, and Cole, and Nora, and the washed morning light lying in a long, warm bar across the desk where a folder had once been a prop, and the smell of cedar, and rain, and coffee going cold. Marlowe cleared his throat, twice, and stood, and did the thing partners did when a hierarchy had rearranged itself under them, and they needed to be seen agreeing with it. "Well," he said, "Nora, the Halvorsen deck is. Halvorsen's office called me at 8. They've never called me at 8. They want to sign Monday. They said it's the best identity work they've seen in a decade. And they used your name." He blinked, as if the sentence surprised him even as he said it. "Your name specifically." I should give you and Cole the room. There's clearly yes, the room. I'll be in the room next to the room." He fled. It was the single most useful thing he had done in 3 years, and Nora almost loved him for it. And then it was only the two of them, and the door shut, and the whole hot, bright city ran on below the washed glass, and neither of them said anything for long enough that the printer down the hall woke, hummed a page, and went quiet again. "You didn't have to do that," Nora said finally. "Any of it. The recording. Firing him in the room. You could have handled Trevor quietly and let me keep thinking the worst of you. It would have been easier. It would have been cleaner." Cole came around the desk slowly and stopped a respectful distance away, the exact distance he'd spacked to on the roof, the one that felt more intimate than the kiss. "I'm tired of clean. Clean is what I do instead of the true thing. You called it yesterday. In the rain, my first instinct was to make the photo vanish, and you were right that it was a tell. You were just wrong about what it told." His hand went to the back of his neck again, dropped again. "It told you I'd rather protect you from a fact than trust you with it, which is its own kind of cowardice. I've made a lot of money being the man who makes inconvenient facts disappear. I forgot, somewhere, that you don't do that to a person you—" He stopped. Nora waited. She had learned this week the shape of the half-second where a man decides whether to finish a sentence, and she watched him stand inside it, and she did not rescue him. Because she had rescued Trevor from that half-second 1,000 times, and it had taught him he never had to cross it. "Say it," she said, "or don't. But don't make it small so it's easier to lose." Cole looked at her. The amusement was gone. What was under it was plainer and more frightening. The face of a man at the back of every room, finally standing at the front of one. "I recognized your name on Monday, and I should have told you Monday," he said. "I let you think it was luck for 4 days, because luck was a better story than your ex tried to hand me a poisoned version of you before I ever met the real one. I was protecting the coincidence because the coincidence was the best thing that had happened to me in years, and I didn't want to hand you a reason to distrust it. That was selfish. It nearly cost you your name in your own building." He took a breath. "I'm sorry. Not the useful kind, the kind that comes with a receipt." He reached into his jacket and took out a folded page and set it on the desk between them and, she noticed and would remember, took his hand off it. Did not hold 2 fingers to its corner. Let it go. "What is that?" Nora said. "Read it." She picked it up. It was a single sheet signed on the firm's letterhead, dated that morning in his own square hand. A formal recusal. Cole Rhodes withdrew, effective immediately and permanently, from any oversight, review, credit, or decision-making authority regarding the Halvorsen account and any account led by Nora Bennett, for as long as he held an interest in the firm. The account and everything that flowed from it, the promotion, the table, the name on the door of the deck, would answer to Marlowe and the partners and to no part of Cole. "You can't take direct credit for my work now," Nora said slowly. "You can't say we about it. That was the whole reason you bought the firm, you told me. So you could say we about the best work in the city. I know what it was for. You just signed it away. I signed away the part where anyone, Blake, Trevor, Marlowe, you at 3 in the morning in 6 months gets to say I handed you the account because of a roof. Cole's voice was very steady. It's the only apology with a cost I could think of that actually pays you and not me. Anything else is words. You said it yourself, in the kitchen, the problem with being handed things is you never get to know. So I'm making it structurally impossible for me to have handed you this. Now you'll always know. The leaf was yours. The account is yours. I'm on paper as the man who can't touch either. The corner of his mouth moved, at last, tired and real. I'd rather be that than the man who owns a third of your talent. It turns out I liked being the window better anyway. Nora held the page. Outside the storm, washed glass, a window cleaner's rig, swung slowly down the face of the tower across the street, and the sun broke fully out from behind the last of the cloud and laid itself across the desk and across the signed letter and across her own hands, warm, spilled, summer gold, exactly the light that had lain across her floorboards the morning after she'd told herself she would never see him again. I read people for a living, she said. Her voice was not level anymore. She let it not be. I put whole companies into one green leaf. And the one man I couldn't read all week was you, because I wanted door one so badly I couldn't trust my own eyes. She set the letter down, carefully, on the sunlit wood. And now you've gone and made yourself readable. On purpose. In writing, which is the single most infuriating thing you've done, and you've had a competitive week. Cole laughed, one low note, surprised out of him, the same note she'd caught in her own hand on the roof. I need you to hear the ugly part, though, Nora said, before she could lose her nerve, because I'm not doing this the reasonable way anymore. I'm done being easy to work with. I nearly gave Blake the account last night, not because I believed him, because giving it away was quieter than defending it. I have spent 2 years with a man who taught me that the fastest way to end a fight was to disappear inside it, and I got so good at disappearing that I did it to you in the rain. I decided what 4 words meant and left before you could finish being a person. That's mine. That's not Trevor's, and it's not yours. I do it too. She made herself hold his eyes. So if this is going to be anything, I can't be the woman against the wall who lets you be the man at the window. We'd just be 2 people who vanish for a living, admiring each other's technique. That, Cole said quietly, is the most accurate description of me anyone has ever said to my face. And you did it in 1 sentence. And I'd like it on the record that I find that unbearable and also the reason I'm still standing here. Is that a yes? She said. To not vanishing? He stopped. And she watched him refuse the easy single word, watched him reach past it on purpose. It's a promise. Which is worse, because you can hold me to it. The window cleaner's rig reached the bottom of its run. Somewhere below them, the city ran hot and bright and washed and enormous, indifferent as ever, and did not notice at all that on the 9th floor of a mid-sized branding studio, 2 people who had made careers out of standing at the back of rooms were, for once, standing at the front of one, close, and not disappearing. For the record, Cole said, and now the amusement came back up into his face, careful and warm, the light behind frosted glass I've thought all week about the roof. The 11 seconds. And I've decided the single most unfair thing you ever did to me was taste like lime and then refuse to give me your name. You brought me corn, Nora said. Tuesday and a lime. You think you're subtle. I think I'm extremely subtle. It's working, she admitted, and it was the thing she'd refused to say on Tuesday, and she watched it land, and she stopped, at last, making her face a countertop. Let it do whatever it wanted to do, which turned out to be smile, helplessly, at a man she had kissed to escape her past and was now, apparently, going to have to kiss to face her future. Nora Bennett, Cole said. May I have your name? You already have it. It's on a recusal letter. Then, may I have the 11 seconds? Properly, on the record. In a building where I can't get you fired for it, because I signed that away too. She thought about saying something dry. She had a whole inventory now. She'd been collecting it all week, the way he collected the small true things about her. Instead, she put her palm flat against his chest. Against a heartbeat she'd felt go still under her hand once before like a bird had landed on him, and she felt it not be still this time. Felt it going, fast and unhidden, and that, more than any letter, was the thing she finally let herself believe. "Don't count," she said, and kissed him, and meant it the whole way through. And there was no one behind her this time she was trying to escape. They signed Halverson on Monday. Nora's name went on the account alone, under a note in the file, in Marlowe's own reluctant hand, that read sole lead, and Halvorson, who came in himself to sign, who still smelled faintly of cut grass, as if he'd walked his aisles that morning, shook her hand and said the leaf was going on the side of every van he owned by autumn, and she should expect to see herself at 40 miles an hour on the interstate, which she should find either flattering or alarming, dealer's choice. She found it flattering. She kept the phrase. It had started as Cole's. Priya took the news the way Priya took everything, which was loudly, over dumplings, on Nora's fire escape in the long gold light of a July evening, while the block below simmered toward another endless bright night. "So let me make sure I have the arc," Priya said, waving a dumpling like a baton. "You kissed a stranger to escape your ex. The stranger became your boss. Your ex tried to blackmail the boss into ruining you. A colleague tried to blackmail you with a photo of you kissing the boss. And the resolution, Nora, is that the boss legally made himself unable to profit from your talent. In writing, as a love letter." She shook her head slowly. "I have eaten room temperature shrimp at every important moment of my life and missed all of this in real time. It's a pattern. I'm going to see someone about it. You didn't miss it. You caused most of it. You told me to test him. I told you to watch his hands. His hands were a whole novel." Priya grinned, then softened, the way she did when the teasing had done its work and the true thing wanted room. "You look different, you know. You've looked different since Friday. You stopped doing the thing." "What thing?" "The wall thing. The furniture thing. You walk into rooms like you're allowed in them now." Priya bumped her shoulder. "It's very annoying. I preferred you insecure and available for emergencies. I'm still available for emergencies. I know. That's the only reason I'm not jealous." She popped the dumpling. "Where is he tonight, anyway, your recused billionaire window man? He's not a billionaire. He owns a third of a mid-sized branding studio, which he can't even take credit for anymore, so financially I've been a disaster for him." Nora tipped her head back against the warm brick. Down the block, the flower seller was rolling her awning in for the night. A saxophone leaked out of a bar 2 streets over. The same bar, maybe, the same phrase. The city hummed its particular July hum. "He's downstairs." "He's been circling the block for 10 minutes because he refuses to double park, and he thinks I don't know he does this. He brings lime. Every time. He thinks it's subtle." Priya looked at her for a long moment and did not make a joke, which from Priya was the loudest thing she could have done. "Real love doesn't announce itself, does it?" she said quietly. "It just keeps showing up with lime and refusing to double park. Don't put it on a tote bag. I'm going to put it on a tote bag." Later, when Priya had gone, and the light had bruised down from gold to blue to the deep warm dark of a summer night that refused to fully cool, Nora went down to the street, and Cole was there, leaning on the hood of a car he had indeed parked legally 2 blocks away, sleeves rolled against the heat, a paper bag in one hand, and sticking out of the top of it, entirely unsubtle, a single lime. "You know," she said, crossing to him over the warm damp pavement, "there's an easier way to tell a woman you think about her." "There is. I signed it. It's in a file." He handed her the bag. It was warm and smelled of corn and coriander and chili, and under it lime and Friday, and every good thing this impossible week had cost her and then given back. But I've found that people believe the letter less than the lime. The lime shows up. The letter just sits in a drawer, being correct. Nora took the bag. Above them, the fire escapes climbed away into the dark, and a neighbor's radio drifted down, hand claps and horns, a summer song, and the whole enormous indifferent city went on around them, exactly as it had the night she'd kissed a stranger by a railing to make herself disappear. Except that she was not disappearing now, and neither was he, and that, in the end, was the only thing that had actually changed, and the only thing that mattered. "I told myself I'd never see you again," she said, in the elevator. "Both times. I know." "You said." You're very confident for a woman who is wrong about this specific thing on a reliable schedule. I'm going to be wrong about it for a long time, I think. She leaned into him, into cedar and cotton and lime, and felt his heart going, fast and unhidden, under the hand she'd once put there to hide. I keep saying I'll never see you again, and there you are. In my building. On my street. In a bag with a lime in it. Then stop saying it, Cole murmured into her hair, and I'll stop being there to prove you wrong, and we'll be out of material inside a month, and forced to simply be happy like ordinary people. That sounds terrible. It sounds terrifying, he agreed. Let's do it anyway. And she kissed him, properly, on the record, in a building she was allowed in, and a life she'd stopped hiding from, and did not count the seconds. Because the whole point of the 11 seconds had only ever been that they ended, and these, she was fairly certain, were not going to. The truth, she'd learned, was not the thing that ended you. It was the wall you stopped needing to put your back against, once you finally turned around and faced the room. Love didn't always arrive when it was convenient, or safe, or on a schedule you controlled. Sometimes it arrived in a linen blazer you were trying to escape, wearing the face of a stranger, tasting of lime, and stayed anyway, and showed up the next morning, and the one after that, until the escape became the arrival, and the stranger became the person who refused to double park outside your whole entire life. If this story warms something in you tonight, stay a while, subscribe, and follow along, because there's always another heart learning to stop disappearing, and we'd love for you to be here when it does. Until the next one, take care of each other, and don't be afraid to turn around and face the room.